In this one, we're going to be talking about classes. What classes allow us to do is extend our code in a whole new level because of this concept called inheritance. Classes are also very good for creating objects. So inheritance and objects are very kind of the themes of this video. But classes themselves, what they can have within them are functions, but they can also have data that is associated to that individual class. Now we're going to talk about all of these things as we go forward, but I want you to think of classes much like you think of humans as a part of the mammal class, right? So mammals are a class that humans share attributes with, but then humans have individual things about them that we do not share with other mammals. And then you can also say a class within your own family. So you have attributes within your family that share with your parents, but they don't share with me necessarily or any other people around you. Now, of course, there are some similarities there, but they're not exactly the same. Classes work very, very similar to that. Actually, they're probably modeled off of that idea. So each version of a class is called an object. So if I make an object from that class, that is like saying, hey, this is a piece of that class. Now we know a little bit more about that object because of where it comes from. Now, all this stuff's going to make a lot more sense once we actually put it into action. So let's go ahead and jump in now. Let's actually define a class and run through it. So I'm going to make this class called dog. And I'm going to give it a few things. So an attribute of name equals to, I'll just say John. And then we'll say color equals to brown. Okay, so we've defined our first class. It's not a whole lot different than a function, but notice I don't actually have parentheses at the end. Most of the time you'll probably see it like this as far as a class is concerned, and there's a reason for that, which I'll get into in just a moment. But let's go ahead and copy this class, and we're going to bring it into our Python shell. So I'll type out Python 3 because we'll be working in Python 3. I'll paste in this class of dog. If I type out dog, it will show me that it is a class. If I do dog and then parentheses, it will say dog object, right? So this is object-oriented programming. That is creating an object. This is also known as an instance. An instance of dog is also an object of dog. Those two are used interchangeably. Instance and object. OBJ, of course, being short for object. So you'll see all three of these quite a bit working with all sorts of classes, especially if you move into something called Django. You'll definitely see these three used quite a bit. So now, what is it about any particular class that allows us to work with the data that's in it? So if I go to instance.name, it will give me a name, right? The same thing is true if I do obj.name. It's going to give me that same name. Now, if I did obj.name is now equal to snow, then I just do obj.name. I see that it's going to, obj.name, and I see now it's equal to snow. Now, the question would be, did this change the instance name and the object name? Let's check instance.name, and no, it does not change instance, and it will not change object either. So that is something that's very critical when it comes to classes. What we did with an instance, it's kind of like making a version of that class. Much like you are an instance of a human, just like I am, we are objects of human class. Like, we have certain things that are unique to us, but then we also have things that are not unique to us. So the thing with objects in Python, it can be very similar to that. And that's what we're seeing here, is we've created this class called dog, and it has a name, and it can have a color. So these are attributes within that class of dog. Let's go back into the code, and let's do something else. I'm going to put a function within here and say define get color. And all we're going to return is self.color. Now, I'm going to explain this self.color thing in just a second, but I do need to pass in self here. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this, paste it in again. We want to make sure that we have our spacing down correctly. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that, make sure that there's no extra spacing. And there we go. We've got class.dog. And now I'll do object equals to dog again. And then object.get underscore color, parentheses, press enter. It sends back that color. So what just happened here was we created an instance called obj, and then we ran something dot get color. Notice that I didn't pass anything in it, although there's an argument here that is being passed. So self being that argument. Now, when you create an instance of something, that is what it's referring to. So the object dot whatever is going to be the self, right? So let's look at this another way. Is I said obj equals to dog. So obj is now equal to self. So this is true, right? So if I also in here said printed out self.name, it would have printed whatever this value is right here. So self in this instance, or with dogs, are working off of whatever the object or instance of that class is, right? So if I just did dog.get, dog no parentheses dot get color, it's going to give me the missing argument, right? So dog, the class of dog dot name is going to return not John, but once I don't actually make an instance of it by doing dog parentheses, that's an actual instance, then it won't allow me to do that. So remember, object or the instance of it is what self is referred to. So get color. So it's going to do it based off of that particular instance. So if we did object.color equals to white, and we went object.getColor, what do you expect is going to happen? Well, if I go ahead and copy that, I see that object.getColor is white. So specifically for that instance, the color will be white because we set it as such. So this is a method, also known as a function. Those two are interchangeable when it comes to being inside of a class, that actually gets that color white. So this allows us to do all sorts of things, including something called inheritance. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add in a new class above dog, and we're going to call it class animal. And what we're going to do here is we're going to add some attributes as well as some methods, which are similar to or exactly what we did down here. But we're going to make them animal, and then we're going to have dog inherit from animal. So this is going to make a lot more sense once we do it. So let's jump in. First of all, we can say noise equals to, well, what is the general noise of an animal? Let's just say grunt. Okay. And then we will say that the size is going to be large. Let's just say most animals are large. It's probably not true, but that doesn't really matter. And then finally, we'll say color is going to be brown. And we'll say hair covers body. Okay. So these are some attributes that might actually exist with any given animal, right? So we've got a color, we have a size, we have something about hair, we also have a noise, right? We can say what it eats, we could do all sorts of things to describe this animal more, but we're not going to do that. So now we'll have a method called define get color, and we'll return self.color. And then we'll also define another method, make noise, and it's self, and it's going to return self.noise. Cool. So now that we've got this, we can test out this animal by saying like dog equals to animal with parentheses, and then dog.make noise, right? So let's go ahead and copy all of that. Let's make sure that our spacing is not off for putting it into the shell. So I got rid of all the spacing inside of that class. So let's go ahead and copy this and bring it into the Python shell. And what we see here is we've got our animal of dog, and we can say dog.color and dog.hair, so on, right? So we've got animal, grunt, right? So a dog doesn't actually grunt. A dog, on average, might not be large, right? So like if an elephant is considered large, a dog is definitely not large. Then let's go ahead and do some things to this. Now I could do it on an instance level, that is on the object itself. I could say, like we did down here, I could say dog.size equals to small, and I could say dog.color equals to, let's say, black, and I'll say dog.hair equals to hairless. because there are black hairless dogs, right? Anyway, so that's not really the point. The point is the data in here. So right here is just applying it to this one single instance, right? It's not applying it to a whole range of things. So what we want to do is inherit this dog class down here with that animal instance. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this, the name of animal, and I'm going to put it into these parentheses here. And now what I can do is actually just comment all of this out. Wait, let's actually keep name. I'll keep name in there, but we're going to comment all of that out. And now we've got this new dog. So I can do now, I would say John equals to dog, and John.color equals to, we will leave it as white, and then we'll say John.name equals to Jon Snow. Okay, so now we've got our two classes. I'm going to get rid of some of this other stuff. And we also have two objects in here. So we have an animal class and an object. And we have an animal class and a dog class. And we have an object of dog, and then we have an object of John. So let's go ahead and I'm going to copy these first few things first, and I'm not going to put in that John object just yet. I'm going to paste these things in. So now if I, of course, still if I do dog.hair, it's the same thing. Now I can create a new dog and say new dog equals to dog. Now it's going to be the dog class versus the animal class. And if I do new underscore dog dot name, it gives me John because the animal class has a name of dog. Now, or excuse me, the dog class has a name of John. And if we look at the animal class and I did dog.name, I get an error, right? So animal, the class animal object has no attribute name. That's because we never defined name anywhere up here. We only defined it in our animal class. Now, what if I did something that is defined in animal but is not defined in dog, such as hair? So now we do new dog.hair, and what do I get? It says covers body. So this is showing what inheritance does. So it's inheriting from animal, so the class that's being passed through it, it inherits everything that's in here. So another way to look at this class itself is if I copied all of this and pasted all this here, got rid of that, that is another way to look at that inheritance. It literally took everything from the other one and put it in here. Now let's undo all those things. Another thing that you could note is we can override the default for the parent class. So if I said the name of the animal is Amy, right? So that's the default name for the animal class. Down here is overriding that name. We can also override the size to small. We can also override the color to black. We can also say the age is 19. You know, we can add whatever we want here as far as this class is concerned. All of these are attributes of that particular class. So this explains inheritance. Now, of course, the inheritance also extends to methods. So these methods in here, of course, are functions based off of the any given instance that we're working with. So hopefully that makes sense as far as inheritance is concerned. If it doesn't, definitely play around with this code as much as you possibly can. Try to add your own parameters in here, and then also try to add in your own methods. Something I want to challenge you, and this might be getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, but I want to challenge you with this idea of adding additional arguments to any one of these methods and then being able to call it, much like this dog.makeNoise. So that is, if you added something like, you know, ABC as an argument, how do you run it down here? That is something I'm going to leave you with, and actually tomorrow we'll discuss about those things. We're not going to have like a bonus in this one. Day 8, we'll talk about a lot more things that we can do in classes. If you have any questions, let us know below. Otherwise, let's keep going.